I'd like to call to order. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call to order the Clarkdale Town Council meeting. Uh, uh, excuse me, on Tuesday, August 26, 2025 at 3 p.m. in the Clark Memorial Clubhouse. Roll call. Vice Mayor Hunsetter.
Here.
Councilmember Babbitt Pierce.
Present.
Councilmember O'Neill.
Here.
Councilmember Jones. And please note that Mayor Prudhomme Bauer is present. We have a quorum. Before we get started, I just wanted to mention, and some of you might know this person and some of you might not, but sadly, I want to acknowledge the death of former Clarkdale Police Sergeant Chris Wiley. Chris lived a life defined by service, generosity, and quiet strength. This is from his obituary. His dedication to public service led him to a distinguished career in law enforcement. He began his service as a deputy with Yavapai County Sheriff's Office and later advanced to sergeant with the Clarkdale Police Department. Chris was deeply committed to protecting his community and earned the respect of colleagues and residents alike through his integrity and leadership. I did have the privilege of knowing Chris. I think a few of you in the audience did too. He was a well-liked police sergeant here in Clarkdale. So to his family, we offer our condolences. Okay, let's move on to the presentation time of the Verde Valley Fire District General Obligation Bond. And I'd like to have Chief Danny Johnson from Verde Valley Fire come up to the podium. Make sure you turn on the microphone, just push the button, and it's all yours.
Very good. I appreciate you guys having us out here tonight. And thank you to some of my staff and firefighters that have joined us here this evening, as well as two of our board members as well. So we'll wait till the presentation gets pulled up here.
It's coming.
Very good. Kind of need to turn a little bit to see it.
There we go. And for those who want to know where Town Manager Guthrie is, she is participating through Zoom today.
We're going to see if this works or no. Are we going to go with it or no? All right. Well, once again, my name is Danny Johnson, Fire Chief for Verde Valley Fire District. We're here tonight to talk about our general obligations bond and kind of what that is, and give some information and story on what has been going on with the Verde Valley Fire District. We can move. Let me see. Did it go? All right. All right. So we'll just kind of jump into what a bond is. General obligations bonds, a loan taken by the fire district for the purpose of capital purchases. The bonds are restricted to capital purchases only. They cannot be used for any type of personnel expenses, any kind of ongoing operational costs. They're strictly for capital needs and capital replacement plans. Now it's not working. All right, thank you. All right, so talk a little bit about the backstory and kind of why we're asking for this bond. Our board decided to go for an election, a bond election in this November election. So some of the reasons that we need this: over the past 10 years, our call volume has increased by over 58%. And one of the things that we've also run into is, as many of you have talked about, that I've given in previous presentations, is the limitations on fire districts' ability to fund, right? About 95% of our funding comes strictly through property taxes. And so these limitations, because we fluctuate with the housing market, these limitations keep us from being able to grow with the limit, or with the call volume and with the needs of the community. The other thing that we've had is just the rising costs. And we'll talk a little bit more about that and why this is important to address the rising costs. And then also the similar as the inflationary costs that we're having with goods and services as well that we have to procure. So those are some of the, I won't read each slide but you guys have this presentation. So we can go to the next slide. So I talked a little bit about inflation, and just so you understand some of the constraints that we've been up against. Just as over the past 10 years, our call volume has gone up so much, our costs have gone up tremendously as well. Our workers' compensation costs for the fire department has gone up 241%. And it's also come into the play where there is a lot of workers' compensation companies that will no longer even insure fire departments or fire districts. So we don't have a lot to choose from for competitiveness in the market, but we have started our own self-insured pool, but still the costs are there. Some of the other things that truly affect our cost of doing business is the turnouts that we wear in the firehouse or in the fires. Those have gone up 65% per set. Cardiac monitors have gone up 42%. The big one is fire engines and fire stations. Our fire engines, through all the different procurement and just everything that's affecting manufacturing, those have gone up for 128% from the engine that we purchased 10 years ago for $440,000 to the one we just had to get approved for purchase that'll actually go in the Clarkdale Fire Station here. That it came in at just over $1 million, and just what the fire engines are costing. The other thing that we've seen, just like a lot of our homeowners and commercial construction costs have also gone up quite a bit, where a fire station, 7 to 10 years ago was anywhere from $250 to $400 a square foot. Now they're anywhere from $750 to $950. And some of them are, above $1,000 a square foot right now for firehouses. We'll kind of get into some of the stuff as what's in firehouses and why it's important for us to build them appropriately. So how is the fire district manage this inflation? As you can see on this slide, this is a snapshot of our tax rate over the past 10 years. It stayed flat. And there haven't been substantial increases to our residents in our mill rate. And we've done this responsibly. But we're getting to the point where we can no longer we can't be any more lean or any more efficient with our costs. And especially when we're going to address some of the needs that this bond is going to address, we just don't have the capacity to do it. And we'll talk more about that. And when we talk about our mill rate, statutorily, our mill rate can be $375 per $100 of assessed limited value. And when we've been hovering anywhere from $323 to $331, within about a 10-cent margin this entire time, and it's very minimal. The increase that we did have was to add staffing. Right, we were up against a problem where we were having to mandatory firefighters a lot, and having to have firefighters mandatory work that they work extra hours because we couldn't find the staffing. So by adding those personnel, we've been able to minimize a lot of the mandatories and mandatory firefighters to work more than their 56-hour work week that they already do. Go to the next one. So what will this bond do? There's really, 5 main things, and we'll dive into these a little bit deeper. One is it'll address some of our emergency communications infrastructure. 2, we will build a new fire station in Clarkdale, renovate some current stations, and in those renovations, we'll be able to look at securing district assets and securing district property, and then increasing our level of response. So when we talk about emergency communications infrastructure, this is a project that doesn't just affect Clarkdale. This is one of those projects that affects the entire Verde Valley. And our current communications infrastructure has 2 working repeater sites right now. And I'll show a map that kind of illustrates that here in the next few slides. But the other thing that we have is our infrastructure is more than 10 years old. And in communications world, that's old. And communications that is 10 years old, what we're finding is a lot of our infrastructure that we have is kind of pre-9/11 technology. And we learned a lot about emergency communications in the 9/11 aftermath of what we did. And even our stuff that's 10 years old doesn't meet the standards that were put into place after that 9/11 incident. The other thing that we're seeing is our communications infrastructure is affected by weather, wind events, rain, and we have some old infrastructure that shouldn't be affected by weather, and we continually fight that with static feedback or just not working on some of those major wind or weather events. So what will we need to do with the communications infrastructure? We need to replace end-of-life repeaters, and then we also need to build a communications ring with point-to-point connections. And what that does is, with the point-to-point connections, is if for some reason we have some sort of a break in our infrastructure, it allows another way for the communications to flow. A lot of times there's a misconception that, we push our radio and it just goes right from that radio to alarm room. And that's not how our our radios work. There's actually connections that it has to go to a tower and then transmitted through different point-to-point connections to get that information back to alarm room. And a lot of those are not working. And we talked about redundancies. And then obviously we're doing this and we're coordinating this because we are dispatched and our communications are intertwined with Cottonwood Public Safety, police and fire, and all the other automatic aid partners that we have in the Verde Valley. So we're coordinating this effort with a lot of the regional upgrades and the regional efforts to standardize our communications in this area. This is a map right now, and I'll explain the map here in a minute. This is a map of what our current radio communications infrastructure looks like. You see those repeater sites that I talked about that are working. We have 2 of the yellow ones, right? Those are 2 that are working. The 3 white ones are not working. Either there's issues, it needs to be replaced, or we need to upgrade some infrastructure there. And what I want to show you is the green is where we have decent reception. The red is where we have limited or no reception at all. And the black, we have none. We can't get out. And some of the things that you'll see is there's heavy populated areas, including the town of Clarkdale, that is almost completely in the red. We've got areas in Cornville, off Page Springs. You can see that up just below the double L and Challenges. That's an area where we can't communicate at all. We can't communicate with radios. We can't communicate with cell phones. There are times when we'll have to either set up a relay operation where it eliminates one of our units to be able to communicate, or we'll have to drive 3 or 4 miles to where we can get communications back to the alarm room. And what that does is delays the resources that we may need. If you remember 3 years ago, we had the Cornville fire, or where we had a lot of that area burn. And there was areas where I was sitting in the Cornville fire station with 2 cell phones and 2 radios, and there were times none of them would work. And we're trying to run evacuations. We're trying to get helicopters and planes in there to do drops, and the communications were an issue. So that's a huge issue. So what I want to show on the next slide, that's what it should look like. And that's what we can establish with just upgrading that infrastructure, and then why this is a region-wide issue and not just, one specific community, and why we believe this communications infrastructure is probably one of the best uses of these dollars that we're asking for, because this is not only a public safety issue, this is a firefighter safety issue. This touches everybody. So that's our goal. And these are models that were run by consultants that work in the radio world and understand what kind of coverage that we can get. So I think that these 2 slides really paint the picture of where we're at versus where we need to be. So the construction of a permanent fire station in Clarkdale is another project that's going to be addressed in this bond. Go to the next one. So the current station, as most of you know, the current station is actually owned by the town, and they're allowing us to stay there. And this lease began in 2016 when the lease expires in 31. The lease expires in 31, may sound like a little ways off, but by the time you get design and you get costs and you work through the site location, we'll be bumping up. Now's the time to do it, because that's a 3-year process at best. And that puts us at that timeline. The other thing is the town, we know that the town has a space issue as well. And we would like to be able to give that back to you for you to be able to use it as you need as well. And I think it'll be mutually beneficial. So the question that I get, because obviously this bond is a district-wide initiative with all the different communities that we serve. So I get, why does Cornville care about a fire station in Clarkdale? One of the things that we're making sure people understand is we have equipment at the Centerville station that we don't have the space to keep at the Clarkdale station. And that equipment is a wildland truck. It's called the Type 3, and it's one of our main engines that we take for wildland response and wildfire response. Right now, the way it's currently configured is if the crews need that truck, they have to respond from the station to Centerville, swap out the crews, get everything switched over, then they can respond. And that truck goes anywhere, just like all of our trucks in this region. No community in this region is immune to wildfire response. So we need to have that truck ready and available to respond and not have a 10-minute delay to get the equipment that we need to respond appropriately. So that's why when I'm speaking, this station has a bigger impact than just the town limits of Clarkdale. The other thing that we need to do is look at health and safety concerns related to some of the carcinogens and the contaminant exposures that are in fire stations these days. You go to the next one. So we'll talk more about those as they come up, and I have some other slides because we need to address this at all the stations, because the other two stations that we'll do is we'll need to do some updates and renovations in those stations as well to identify a lot of the same environmental hazards in both stations. So some of the things that we need to do with health and safety improvements, one is enhance firefighter and public safety, and we've kind of talked about how that will happen. Some of the things that we're looking at in the other stations are renovating the high use areas, kitchens and bathrooms. Some of these stations are 15, 20, even older. And those are the areas that even in your own house, they get high use. And when you have a crew of, 5 to 6 adults living in this, they get used. And those are some areas that we need to not only update because they're falling down and they're falling apart, but we also need to improve those with some non-porous surfaces that reduce environmental exposures. One of the things that happens in the firehouse is they run on all different kinds of calls, right? They run on, different disease processes. They run in houses that we get quite a few bed bug exposures, and we get all that stuff potentially brought back into the firehouse. So we're looking at doing some things in those stations that reduce that exposures, not only to the firefighters in the station, but also reduce the exposures that they take home to their families. Upgrading the exterior doors and door locks. Unfortunately, in this day and age, firehouses are not immune to people that want to do harm. We've seen that recently with our firefighter brothers up in Idaho that were attacked. We're not out of the woodworks as far as, I know they like us, right, Randy? But we're not immune. We're not immune to that. We've had multiple instances where a lot of the doors are not automatic locking, and we have to make sure that they're locked when people are going in and out. But we've come back from calls and to where we've had people in our showers, people sleeping in the beds, people eating the food in the refrigerators, and we can't have that, right? There's personal belongings there, there's expensive equipment there, and they need to be there. There's still a community building, but we need to make sure that our stuff and our equipment and our firefighters are secure. We need to look at modernizing some of the mechanical and electrical systems because a lot of the firehouses, what we put in them today is not what we were bringing in 20 years ago. There's upgrades there's draws on different equipment and where we plug in the fire trucks. There's just changes that we need to keep up with. We also need to look at exhaust removal systems, and what that has to do with some of the carcinogens that we'll talk about here in a minute is because we know the diesel exhaust is a carcinogen and it's known carcinogen. And when the fire trucks are parked in the bays and they're running and we leave the bay, all of those carcinogens from the exhaust are being pushed into the firehouse. If you were to walk over to the Clarkdale station, you would see the truck is probably 4 feet away from the door that goes into the main living quarters. And there's no separation. So there's things that we'll be able to add either with exhaust capture and the way mechanical systems are designed to be able to address those issues. The other thing that we have specifically at Station 31 is the septic system is failing. It needs to be upgraded. We've had multiple times over the past year where the firefighters have either woken up or come back from the call and we have sewage in the firehouse. And when that happens, we have to then have the station shut down. There's times I have to send my administrative staff home because nobody would want to work in that environment. And we have to have industrial hygienists come in and clean the floors and clean that so the firefighters have a safe place to live in. And I don't think that, we wouldn't accept that in our own homes, and we shouldn't accept that for our firefighters to live in. And we've already talked a little bit about strengthened perimeter security with the upgraded door locks. So just securing our assets. We'll talk about fire exposures a little bit. Obviously, carcinogens are not the only thing that we're exposed to. There's also stuff on the EMS calls and within the fire stations. The daily exposures, obviously, the diesel exhaust that we talked about is a class 1 carcinogen, but there's other harmful exposures that we'll get with infectious agents. And obviously, you guys remember, unfortunately, we lost a firefighter to an exposure during COVID. And it's one of the things that unfortunately we're exposed to. But there's also at times, exposures to narcotics, fentanyl, and the PTSD and the psychological stressors that we're seeing in public safety is another one. And there's things that we can do in the design and construction of a firehouse to be able to work on helping to address those PTSD exposures and bringing the firefighters back down to a calm state and bringing them to reduce some of those psychological stressors just by the environment that we're living in. So we talked a lot about cancer. And just so you know, these are some of the risks and for firefighter cancer rates. I won't go through all of them, but obviously testicular cancer is 2 times higher than the normal average public. Leukemia is another high one. And just brain cancer and prostate cancer and all these things are related to the fire service and the profession that we're in. And it shouldn't just be, well, that's just what you've chosen. There's things that we can do in our firehouses and how we can help address and reduce the exposure to our firefighters. So how are we going to do this? So there's things that we can do to mitigate firefighter exposures. And some of these strategies are separating the living and working areas. Like we see over here, the working area is 4 feet away from the living area. There's things with separations that we can do with natural barriers. There's airlocks that we can put into fire stations to where the dirty area, which is the bays and where we decon equipment, has a vestibule that has positive pressure that pushes all that out instead of pushes it in. If you were to walk the fire stations right now and you wiped your finger on most of the door jambs, you would see a black soot. And that's all the stuff that's being pushed that's the big stuff that we can see that's being caught in the door jamb, but there's much more that's being able to penetrate those doors. And also creating decontamination zones. What we've realized in the fire stations is we used to just wash all of our equipment in the bays, right? Just lay it out in the bay and wash it. But then, we're walking in the bays and then that gets tracked into the fire stations. It gets tracked into the flooring if the proper flooring isn't put in. If you were walking to the station, we don't spec black grout, but there is black grout in all the tile in the fire stations, and we want to work on that's some of those porous surfaces that we want to look at removing and reducing that cross contamination. Proper storage of PPE. That's one of the things that you'll see a lot of the firehouses creating a separate area. We talked about our turnouts, right? And how much those have gone up in cost. But we've also done some studies to understand what degrades them, right? Some of that is UV light. We need to have them in a room that's separate, that has dark light, and that's also exhausted because even though we clean that gear after every call, that gear still off gases everything that we were in that fire. There's no way yet to get it all out. So having that secure in its own area that's vented, that's also not in the bays where we're pushing diesel exhaust into that equipment after it's been cleaned. And then obviously we talked a lot about interior and architectural design as far as how we can lay out workflow, how we can lay out clean, dirty areas, transition areas, and really look at best practices for protecting our firefighters. So let's talk about the phases of this bond. So the first phase, if this bond passes, we want to project to start around March of 26. The first phase that we would look to do is sell $10 million of bonds. And that would go $2 million into the communications infrastructure, and we would go $7 million into station costs or station construction, and then we would have $1 million in contingency for that first round. The second phase, after those projects would be complete, is we would sell another $5.5 million in bond projects, and that would allow us to do $3 million in Station 31, the one that needed the septic rebuild, and then Station 32 in Cornville, that would allow us to do the other health and safety improvements that we talked about, and then we would have a $500,000 contingency in that. We do have really tight contingencies, but we do feel confident that we can pull this off with the dollars that we have available. All right, so why does the district need the projects to be funded by a bond? We do have the ability to do loans or leases. What happens though with loans or leases is then those repayment of those projects have to come out of operational costs, right? And we already talked about our mill rate of 375. We don't have a huge amount absorb all of our operational costs, because we're also competing in the job market. We're competing to keep our firefighters' compensation competitive, so we don't have to continually replace firefighters when they leave our district to go other areas. And then the other thing that we have to look at is the repayment of the bond and how it's structured. That would be that right now the bond is structured to be repaid over about 20 years, and that's important to understand, because what happens now, if we were to just do this out of operational costs, that would solely fall on the residents of today. By doing a bond, that would anybody that moves into the district or that builds in the district now would have some ownership in repaying the services and the equipment that would be purchased through the bond. So it spreads out the repayment over not just the residents that are here today, but anybody else that comes and joins and benefits from the community and the safe community that we're trying to build. If this bond isn't approved, we will have to rely on operational funding, which we will have to cut a lot of the stuff that we won't be able to do. And at best, if at all, these projects would take at least 30 years to accomplish with the current financial situation of where our limitations are at. And like I said, some projects may get cut and we may not be able to do them at all. So this is the other big question that we get. What is it going to cost, right? Because we understand that this has an impact on our taxpayers, but we need to be upfront. We need to make sure that everybody understands what this repayment would cost. So this is what it would cost, right? So I know these slides are really busy, but I want to make sure that we have opportunity to see this. And this will go out. This information will go out in a voter information pamphlet that we have to do through the county, through their vote for their elections department. So all of this will go to every registered voter in the district as well. So for the purpose of this bond issuance, the total bond that we're going to do over the two sales is 15.5. So for tax purposes, right, a value of $100,000, which you would say my house isn't $100,000, but what I want you to understand, we'll look at this, is we don't get the full cash value. We're a secondary taxing district. So they take off, they go to the assessed limited value, and then they divide that by 100, and then that's what we can apply that bond rate to. So for a house that has a assessed limited property value of $100,000, which there's quite a few of them, it's about $32 annually, which is about 27 or $2.70 a month. For one that's about 190, which is actually the median for our district, it's about $5.15 a month or $61 annually. And then you can see we've broken it out with commercial and agricultural as well. They're assessed at a different rate. Our district does not have a lot of commercial, or we have a little bit more vacant land or agricultural land, but those are all assessed at a little different rate. So the other question is we want our voters to be educated. So if you want to find out what your values are and where you're at, you can go to the GIS system on gis.yavapai.az.gov. And if you click on the search button that pops up with that, no, you can just go to the next one. Okay. This will pop up. This little box on the left will pop up, and then you can search your own property, and your property will show up in a little box like that's on the right. And this is a resident in our district that we pulled from. And then you go down to assessments, and that'll show you click that little line that says assessments, and then this will pop up. So as you can see, we talked about this assessed limited value, right? After they divided it by 100, we get that 16.5, and then that's what the bond rate, that 32 cents per $100 of that rate would be applied. So for this situation, that 16.5 divided by 100 is 165 times 32. This property owner in this district, or in this area of our district, would be $53 annually, or $4.47 a month. So that's what I have. I'm open to questions, and then I would like to have one of my PAC members come up and speak and kind of talk about the bond as well, because I can only educate. I can't advocate, but I've got people that can.
Thank you, Danny, very much. Questions from council? I think Lisa, Marnie, and then Deb.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you. Will passing this bond affect our homeowners insurance rates?
Homeowners insurance rates right now are not affected very much by fire districts. Because when we look at our fire district, right, we have a split of 310, right? And so what you see a lot of ISO ratings that are 1 or 2. You probably see this at some of the larger municipalities. In a fire district, it's going to be very hard for us to get a 1 or anything above a 310. We had to do an ISO rating about a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago now, and we have as good of a rating that we can get based on our water sources, right? It's 100% on our water sources. And the other thing that we're battling right now in the state is there are blanket cancellations by a lot of the insurance companies that the fire districts have no control over. We're working with our legislators and we're on working groups across the state to try and work on ways to address that, because there's no rhyme or reason right now in the state of Arizona why a lot of homeowners are either having their rates doubled, tripled, or canceled just based on cutting risk. So we wish we could have more input on that and be able to do parcel by parcel assessments as far as making sure that homeowners are getting the best rate. But unfortunately, we don't have a lot of control over the insurance companies and what they're doing. And our ISO rating of a 310 is about the best that the district is going to be able to get just based on how it's laid out and with our water sources. You're welcome.
Marnie, and then Deb.
Okay, I got a lot here. Number one, whoever does your social media is awesome. A lot of it is hilarious. There's some really serious, important stuff on there too. So kudos to them.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing those statistics about health and safety. I think that stuff is really important for us to recognize. And if anybody else is concerned, PSPRS also has a lot of things that they're putting in place because they know about these concerns. And so, it is incumbent on us to make sure that the fire stations are as safe as they can be, but they're supporting you guys in multiple ways.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And cancer claims and PTSD claims are 2 top claims right here across the state right now for municipal and fire districts.
At least from where I sit, in 2031, we are not going to kick you out. So I know that you're planning ahead, but we recognize how long these things can take. So I am speaking for myself. I'm not going to kick you out in 2031. And then finally, I actually have a question for you. Okay. There's been a lot of talk about centralizing communications in the Verde Valley and dispatch. Will that change your infrastructure needs?
Well, the good thing about this bond and the good thing about what's going on with communications infrastructure is they're running congruent, right? So we have good ideas as far as where we want to take our communications infrastructure in this region. But part of us is incumbent to have the dollars to invest in it, right? So what we would be able to do is, because we're actively involved and we're actively a participant in making sure that the communications infrastructure for this entire region is going to be sustainable, we wouldn't invest any of those dollars until we had the plan in place to move forward. So it's actually great timing. I know a lot of the other partner agencies, public safety partner agencies in this region are securing funds to be able to fix what we have. But it's great timing for us because it's just almost like it was planned. So we're being able to have the dollars to be able to invest in that infrastructure once we decide what this region is going to look like.
Thank you.
Deb.
Yeah. Thank you for the presentation. It was a lot
There is a lot.
A lot.
I
It's like, is 15.5 going to be enough? But that's another question.
Well, that's what we can't go much. We can't go any more. That's the most, well, we could go a couple 100,000 more, but we're statutorily capped on what we can actually bond. Unlike a lot of others, taxing districts, school districts, and some of the other water districts, we can't go above that. That's one of the limitations, the statutory limitations that fire districts have. We can't. We used to be able to, but we're not allowed anymore.
Okay. So as a town that survives on grant money, it begs the question, are you applying for grants for any of this stuff that is very safety oriented, firefighter protection, renovation of, old buildings, that type of stuff?
Yes, we are applying for a little over $1.5 million in grants annually. A lot of it has to do with equipment. A lot of the things when you get to the building grants, right, they have to be shovel-ready projects, right? So what we're hoping is that if we have funding and we're starting that process, that maybe we can tag on to some of those shovel-ready project grants and maybe either add some additions to the building, add some partners to the building. But the first thing we have to do is secure our finances and make sure we have money to begin the planning phases, and then we can look for those opportunities.
Okay. And as far as the fire station goes, you mentioned Clarkdale. Is that a guarantee that we'll get a new station in Clarkdale? Or-
If the bond passes, we need to build a new fire station in Clarkdale. I don't know where it would be yet, because if we do have the funding, what we want to do is work with the town and then work with our own GIS mapping and look at future growth, look at call volume, and really do a heat map of where the best place to place the fire station would be based on land availability, land buildability, and all the different things, the factors that would go into that fire station.
Okay.
I guess that's a yes. Maybe.
It's a yes. No, we need one here.
Okay,
We need one here.
okay, Laura.
One of the communication issues that's been happening in Cornville is the resistance to putting any kind of tower in Cornville. And does your expansion and desire to put better communication mechanisms out there, will it be impeded by that resistance to cell towers?
So the good thing about what you saw on that map, all it is it's improving the current infrastructure that's on towers that we currently have. We are not adding cell phone towers. We're not in the cell phone tower business.
No, I didn't.
We are just looking at upgrading the current infrastructure that we have on current towers.
Okay, good. And then just, this is something I heard about regarding the tax rate. I actually did my little mechanism. It's $20 a year more for me in taxes. So personally, I know we're having an issue though, that like some of the RV parks are taxed in a way that does not necessarily reflect the number of people and the potential volume of calls that you guys get. And is there some kind of an effort to start to look at that issue?
That is a statewide issue that we're looking to address in legislation. And you're absolutely correct. The way a lot of RV parks are taxed is when I put the tax rate up there for commercial, residential, and vacant land, a lot of the RV parks are taxed as what's called a mixed use. And they take the different buildings that are on that. If they have a clubhouse, that's commercial. And then the spaces, which there's really no value to them, are residential, and they come up with a mixed use. And I did speak on this at the Camp Verde Town Council a few months back. And what we're running into in this region, it's obviously, you guys are very, very well, it's a destination region for vacationing and just visiting, and tourism is such a huge industry here. What's happening is that is increasing our transient population. And it's very hard to capture that across the board, as far as, because like I said, fire districts don't get any sales tax. We don't get any tourism tax. We're strictly property tax. And what happens with that is now the residents of the fire districts in this area are funding emergency response for the millions of visitors that we have in this region. And there's no way to recoup those costs. There's no mechanism to be able to recover any of those costs. Unfortunately, that has to be a legislative change that we're working on through the state and with the Arizona Fire District Association, with our lobbyists. But we have an uphill battle with that, because we do realize that there is a discrepancy, and honestly, it's an unfair way to assess our residents to provide emergency services for the national forests, for the roads, for the highways, for the parks, because our residents are funding operational readiness, because there's a cost associated with us to be ready to respond anywhere in the district every day, for people that may be getting themselves in trouble on trails because they're not from this area, to get themselves in trouble on UTVs that they rent, to get themselves in trouble in so many different places in our region. But you're absolutely correct. There is a imbalance in the funding model for emergency response based on the burden being solely on our taxpayers.
Gotcha.
Thank you. That's it.
Oh, okay. Any
and
other questions? Go
one more
ahead.
thing, in case anybody is shocked by the $1 million number for a fire truck, there are some very informative videos on YouTube and stuff that talk about why a fire truck costs $1 million.
They're not cheap.
Well, I thank you very much, Danny, for this presentation on this bond measure. I think it's really an important thing for Clarkdale. We've waited a long time to get a new fire station here. A lot of issues you've brought up. The biggest part is selling it out there to the public. Others in the audience here of the need and what it will mean to our community to have that. So yeah, I would like to hear from some of your board members, other firefighters here that you've brought with you. Since you can't comment on this, I'd like to hear from them, but I think everybody here asked most of the questions I had.
Very
so.
good. Well, I have one individual that can speak tonight. Everybody else is either on duty or an elected official. So if you guys don't mind, I would like to have Seth Murphy come up and speak.
Okay, so that'd be great.
Hello, my name is Seth Murphy, and I'm here representing Sedona Verde Valley Firefighter Association. And I've been tasked to be the Political Action Committee Chairman in charge of fundraising and getting the word out to pass this bond. The reason why the Firefighter Association is really pushing this bond more than anything is health and safety of firefighters. This has become a huge issue in our industry. And I think these statistics that we're seeing coming out in the fire service are pretty staggering. The life expectancy of firefighters after they retire is pretty minimal. And without action that we desperately need, it's just going to get worse. And so what we're doing right now as a firefighter group is we are fundraising, and we currently have a Facebook, Instagram posts pushing information out to the public. We've raised funds. We'll see a mailer coming out pretty quick here. We're waiting closer to when the ballots come out because the average attention span for American is about 8 seconds. Seriously, a goldfish is 9 seconds if you look it up. But what we're doing is we're timing our information to get out there so people really have an understanding what the need is and the financial impact on them personally. We feel like if we're able to get the message out, people are more than willing to support the firefighters, especially when they see the true financial impact. Really, for what we're going to do is quite the return for their money. As far as communication goes, as the chief said, we've had some pretty serious problems, specifically with the shadowing interference issues in Cornville, where we've had structure fires, where we weren't able to communicate, we weren't able to speak to dispatch, weren't able to call additional resources, technical rescues, where once again, we had to use human repeaters to try to get out to call for additional resources. And then the health and safety issues in the firehouse, as far as carcinogens, spoke to bed bugs, scabies, unfortunate situations like that are tracked back into the firehouse. And we really are working hard to get a handle on limiting those exposures to firefighters. So what we're asking is everyone to please follow and like Verde Valley Firefighters. And also when you see those mailers, encourage your neighbors to read them, encourage other voters in the district to understand the impact on them. And I think once they do that, they'll be more than willing to support.
Any questions for Seth? Yeah, I think it's important to be very clear what the costs are going to be to every household in the whole district. Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, absolutely. Anybody else from the group wishes to speak? They're all sitting in the back row. Danny, come on back up.
Well, we do appreciate your time today and hearing this, and we're giving this presentation, around all the communities, and we appreciate it. We would stay a little longer, but we do have our own board meeting to prepare for tonight as well. So we absolutely appreciate your time and the questions and the dialogue, and we thank you guys.
Okay, we appreciate very much you coming and all, and you've given us information how to get a hold of you if there's any questions we have. We might, just for an information piece, be able to post this easily if it's shareable.
This presentation is on our Verde Valley Fire District
Okay.
website, and it is also in the packet. I believe that you guys posted the
Yes,
packet on
it
your
is. Yeah.
website as well. So
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.
so much.
Thank you all for coming. And I know you have a board meeting and we'll all be hearing more about this.
Thank you.
Mhm. Okay. Tell Brittany she can go. We just have a little logistical situation going, so she's good to go? Okay, if the council will let me just rearrange the schedule a little bit. Brittany needs to leave here soon, and she would like to come up and present item 7B, which is updates to the financial operations guide. So welcome, Brittany. And I think Town Manager Guthrie is also on for this too, if there's any questions.
Thank you. Thank you for considering time. Working mom is hard sometimes. So good afternoon, Madam Mayor and Council. I'm here today to discuss, consider and act upon the revisions to the Financial Operating Guide, which is often referred to as the FOG. The Financial Operating Guide is reviewed periodically, typically annually, for updates that result from changes in processes, procedures, and best practice guidelines. This document guides financial practices and operations impacting all of the departments within the town. The first policy update we are recommending is to add a capitalization threshold policy. This recommendation stems from our fiscal 2024 audit. Our previous auditor, Colby and Powell, suggested adding the policy to align with current best practices. Capitalization policies set thresholds to help determine how we record expenses relating to acquiring or improving long-term assets. The capitalization threshold policy presented has been reviewed by our current auditor and approved by staff. The second policy that we are suggesting, we noticed while reviewing the operation guide in preparation for our current audit that we did not have an official financial document retention policy. We do comply with retention statutes, but we didn't have a specific policy addressed to it. This policy helps ensure legal compliance, financial accountability, efficient record management, and the preservation of historical information. Retention schedules are set by the Arizona State Library Archives and Public Records, and the proposed policy helps us ensure compliance with those schedules. We are also proposing to update it's an internal form, it's our procurement form. I got input from various townwide departments. This helps us track large project expenses, and it also makes the form more user-friendly. It's a fillable PDF. So at this time, it's recommended by staff. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them, that you guys or that the council approves the proposed revisions to the financial operating guide.
Is there any questions for Brittany on this? Yes.
I'm just grateful that we are following the guidance of the auditor and that in that process, you also found some other things that were lacking. So hopefully in this year's audit, there won't be even more things to change. And I love that you made it a fillable PDF, like every step we can do to make it easier. So
Yes.
thank you.
Agreed.
Thank you. Any other questions for Brittany? Yeah, thank you. I agree with Councilmember Baba Pierce on this. Those were just small deficiencies, but they actually are pretty big deficiencies for us to correct and put into place the policies needed and processes to just make it even a better system that we have, and hopefully, yeah, well, maybe we'll have a perfect audit someday. So if there are no questions, I'll take a motion on this.
Madam Mayor, I move that we approve the revisions to the financial operations guide as presented. That's because
There
it's
a
a great
second?
idea.
Second.
It's been moved by Vice Mayor Hunsetter and seconded by Councilmember Babbitt Pierce to approve the revisions to the financial operations guide as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Hearing none, motion carried. There you go, Brittany. Thank you so much. And have a good time at your daughter's event. Okay, we're going to come back in order to the businesses to item 4, which is public comment. The town council invites the public to provide comments at this time. Members of the town council may not discuss items that are not specifically identified on the agenda. Therefore, action taken as a result of public comment will be limited to directing staff to study the matter, responding to any criticism, or scheduling the matter for further consideration and decision at a later time. If you so if anybody wishes to speak, you can come up to the podium. You get 5 minutes to speak. If there's anybody online, just put a note in the chat and our town clerk will let you in. So does anybody want to come up and make public comment? Seeing just a, yes, come on up and state your name and if you're a Clarkdale resident.
I'm Jean Baird. I'm Lower Town Clarkdale. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I just want to tell you that there are people that are so excited about the park on Saturday. And I spoke to Vincent Hood today, who's painting a snake for the park. And he said that the council in the Yavapai Nation, Yavapai Apache Nation, is also very excited about the fact that we're going to have the park. And I do see the kids hanging on the gate waiting for it to open. And I like the colors. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jean. We're excited too. Anybody else wishing to give public comment? Hearing none, let's move on to item 5, which is reports, departmental reports of building permit, grants report, magistrate court report, Parks and Recreation report, Police Department report, Verde Valley Humane Society report, water and wastewater report, and an amended finance report that was sent to us in this agenda. So are there any comments or questions on these reports? Okay. I think they're pretty straightforward. You know, revenues are holding steady, still some concerns, but let's hope we see some growth in the next report month. Okay, let's move on to consent item number 6, which is our consent agenda. We have 3 items on consent this afternoon. We have approval of the minutes of the Common Council from August 12th, 2025. Resolution 1741, which deals with call to the public, and item C, which is Clarkdale Associate Magistrate. Do we wish to pull any item for discussion?
Madam Mayor, I'd like to pull item B, resolution 1741.
Okay. Any other parts to be pulled out? Item C, which is Associate Magistrate, if we pass it on consent, I will be doing a oath of office with that magistrate, so Associate Magistrate.
So in that case, should we pull it?
We don't have to. Yeah, if you wish to pull it, we can and do it separately.
I will pull item C.
Okay, so we have one item on consent. We have pulled B and C for separate discussion. So I'll take a motion to approve consent agenda item A.
Madam Mayor, I move that we approve consent agenda item A.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember Jones and seconded by Vice Mayor Hunsetter to approve.
Remember her name.
O'Neill, excuse me, I'm sorry. And to approve, yes, O'Neill. I need to write this down. Uh, uh, We have a motion to approve consent agenda item A as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Hearing none, motion carried. Okay, why don't we do C and then we'll come back to B, okay? Item C is the Clarkdale Associate Magistrate. This is to consider and act upon a request to reappoint Elin Reardon as the Clarkdale Associate Magistrate for a 2-year term commencing September 1, 2025. Susan, did you wish to make any comments on this?
No, ma'am. I just, since we've transitioned to this contracted court services, it saved the town money. Our audit has been perfect in this area, and we've had no complaints from the public. So I think this is a really beneficial contract that we have with Cottonwood, and this is a piece of that contract. So I encourage you to approve this reappointment.
Okay, thank you. So any questions? Hearing none, I'll take a motion on this.
Madam Mayor, I move that we reappoint Lynn Reardon as the Clarkdale Associate Magistrate for a 2-year term commencing on September 1st, 2025.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved by Council Member Babbitt Pierce and seconded by Council Member Jones to reappoint Elin Reardon as the Clarkdale Associate Magistrate for a 2-year term commencing on September 1st, 2025. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Hearing none, motion carried. And Lynn, if you can come up, I will do the oath of office. I, Lynn Reardon, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution and laws of the state of Arizona. And I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and defend them against all enemies, foreign or domestic. And that I will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of the office of municipal magistrate. The duties of the office of the municipal
Magistrate.
It is, according to the best of my ability. So help me God. With that, you are sworn in. Thank you. Thank you. And I'll get this signed.
Here to sign it really quick and then I'll notarize it. She already signed my book. Nope.
That's answer.
Hmm?
You signed it.
Yep, she's good.
Thank you, Lynn, so much.
Congratulations.
Thank you for coming down today.
Yes,
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn, so much. Okay, let's move on back to item 6B, which is Resolution 1741, call to the public. This is to consider and act upon Resolution 1741, amending call to the public procedures to reduce the required individual speaker time limit from 5 to 3 minutes each unless a different amount of time is listed on the agenda or is determined by the presiding officer or by a majority vote of the council. So it's open for discussion. Town Manager Guthrie, do you want to comment on this or?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. The reason that we've brought this back before you is that recently we met with the town clerk and the city attorney to discuss our procedures and handling of public comment at our meetings. One of the things that came up is our practice is somewhat different than many other towns in that we had an established 5-minute time period that was given to each speaker. This was not in place prior to 2022. In talking to past mayors, previously it was really left up to the presiding officer, whoever was chairing that meeting, to set that time limit. But in 2022, because we didn't have rules really set, we brought a resolution to you all as a body and approved the 5-minute time. However, it is not something that's necessarily consistent with normal practices. And what our concern is that when we have issues where we have many, many people who want to speak, which we, have had recently and anticipate in the coming year, that 5 minutes can really add up when you have multiple people. I think for the council, I know that you all are A-OK with staying as long as it takes to hear from every single resident. But out of respect for the other residents, we propose that we give you all the option in a meeting to decrease the window of time to 3 minutes to really allow anyone who wants to get up and speak the opportunity to do so without making some people wait for an extended period of time to get through all the speakers. So again, it's just a recommendation based upon what we're seeing as a best practice. And we don't feel like it necessarily has to be 3 minutes, but we're just proposing to give yourselves the flexibility that in a given meeting with certain circumstances, you can alter that amount of time given the situation. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Questions or comments? Laura?
Since I'm the person who asked it to be pulled, I'll comment first. I love the intent of this, but I guess I would like it to read, whereas such remarks shall be limited to 5 minutes each unless a different amount of time is listed on the agenda or determined by the presiding officer, majority of votes of the council. And I feel this way because I think as a body, over the last few years, we have built a lot of goodwill in our community as having a reputation to people who listen to our residents, and even people who are not residents. When they come to speak, they feel like they have time, they're not under pressure, they can gather their thoughts. And I've been in a lot of public meetings in other municipalities where people feel incredibly under the 3-minute time pressure. And there's a clock going and it's counting you down by the second. And it doesn't necessarily, people leave rattled. They don't leave feeling heard. And I feel like our 5-minute rule has given people that ability to really be heard. I love the idea, as Town Manager Guthrie just said, that in instances where we think that there's going to be a time where we would like to reduce that time because we feel there will be a lot of people and we want to be able to get as many people up to talk as possible, that we can reduce that. If we can put that on an agenda, people will know that ahead of time. I'd rather see us do it that way, and just because for the majority of what we do, that 5-minute time limit seems unburdensome to me. But
Okay, Lisa and then Marnie.
Thank you. I appreciate your comments. I think that when we have large meetings, I have never been to a meeting where a whole bunch of people show up to speak where they're not angry. And I have no problem with that. I think if you, this is where you get heard. But I think that saying this is we're in effect saying this is a contentious meeting, so now we're going to limit you to 3 minutes, is a little bit more of waving the red flag than saying our standard procedure is 3 minutes, but we'll allow you the courtesy of 5. I see the intent of this, in the same way that you do, but I have a different opinion on how to put it into effect. So that's my 2 cents.
Hey, Marnie.
Thank you. I have a question maybe for Town Manager Guthrie, not sure for who it's for, but I was in Flagstaff a couple weeks ago and they do a thing in their call to the public that if there are at least 10 people who wish to speak on the same item, one person can go and speak for the entire group and they get a longer allotted period of time. And so I'm wondering if the way that this is worded would give the presiding officer that flexibility, because I think that benefits us in both ways, that people get to be heard and their message is shared. We're not rushing people, we're not cutting them off, but they are putting forward the person who is able to best speak on the issue. And so it's truly about getting the message across instead of having a whole bunch of people speak and really overwhelming the group with, as Councilmember O'Neill pointed out, often really angry people.
Thank you, Councilmember Babbitt Pierce, for the question. That is the intent, is to allow the flexibility of either the presiding officer or by a vote of the council if necessary to, and as you know, both of those provisions are in this resolution, but that you all can make appropriate decisions in the moment. And that's what we felt was really limiting, in the current status, is there really is not that flexibility if you really go by the resolution. So we're just trying to leave it up to you guys in a meeting. So absolutely, you could say, this is what we want to do. We want to allow this person extra time because they're going to represent many others. So yes, that could be accomplished with this resolution.
Thank you.
Yep.
When I attended the league training back in December, they spent quite a bit of time on this particular topic. And there were a lot of examples that were given. And at the time, I actually was, in my mind, questioning, I didn't bring it forward, but questioning why we were 5 and the majority of cities and towns are 3 or even 2. Some of them even put it at the end of their agenda. Some the lawyers actually said we're not even required to have public comment. And in our town, we have, I think, lots of ways that we can hear the public. They can send a letter. We have work sessions. We have a number of different meetings. They can meet with council members directly. We have, the coffee with the council. And as Councilmember Babbitt Pierce mentioned, one of the things that they talked about at the league is that you can have a spokesperson for a group that's all going to come up. And we've seen meetings like that. You see them online where everybody gets up and says the same thing. And it, 3 minutes. And, for 5 minutes, I think the unintended consequences of that is it uses up staff time and maybe not the best use of staff time. So I like the opportunity that we have to have some flexibility. I think going with the 3, I thought a lot of people have the ability with 3 minutes to get their message out. And if they don't, they can send an email or a letter or talk with one of us individually. And I think all of us are open and willing to listen.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I also think we are going to see, and we are already beginning to see from a state level, a mandate put on us to reduce public comment and public participation. And I think as a community, it is something that we do value. As you said, we make as many opportunities as we can. Those opportunities may get statutorily smaller. And so for me, I would rather see us stick to the 5 minutes. And if we feel like, if we know we have a topic that there's going to be 25 people who want to speak, then we on the agenda say everybody will only have 3 minutes for that agenda item. And do it that way versus trying to open it up. I just think it's going to be easier to reduce the time than expand the time. So that's where I feel.
Okay. Interesting point. What I see, I like the flexibility that we have to be able to work with the audience out there and allow as much time as possible for people to speak. A variety of people to speak. I can see if we put 3 minutes in and somebody is up there, let's say it's in our public comment time at the beginning, is that I can look at them if they're up to 3 minutes and say, it looks like you want to speak a little bit longer, and I could look to all of you and say, can we go to 5 minutes? So it gives me that flexibility. Now, that's how I operate, is that I would allow that I would bring that forward for you all, everybody to decide. So I can see us doing that. I like the idea of being able to expand the time rather than contract the time, because I think it just isn't really, people get angry about that. I've seen that happen. Is that, well, you used to give us 5 minutes and now you're going to give us 3. And I like that flexibility of being able to expand rather than contract. Marnie, I think you have a comment.
Thank you, I do. I think there's an important point here that this is all town meetings. This is not just council meetings.
Yeah.
And I think that we can all agree that the mayor has run a lot of really great meetings for a very long time and is very well versed in running a meeting. But some of our commission members do not have as much experience. And so the more we can set them up for success, I think the better off the whole town will be.
Okay.
I just like to respond to what the mayor said. I don't think that making a decision based on the individual person who is standing making a comment on whether we're going to expand or change the time is necessarily the intent of this. Because people do know if they have 5 minutes to speak, often will write and time themselves to make sure they have 5 minutes. If they have 3 minutes, they will also often write and time themselves. So if we have an issue that, again, we feel like there's going to be a lot of people, we can put on the agenda for this item, or however that is worded properly, Charity, thank you. People will be given 3 minutes to speak, so people will know ahead of time. But the idea that somehow whoever's running a meeting is the arbiter of whether that person has 3 or 5 minutes to talk is not, I don't think, the intent of this, because that just potentially shows you're being biased in how you're letting people present at a meeting.
Gotcha. Good point. Okay. So how do we want to go forward here? Any other comments? Okay. Okay. If there's no other comments, I will entertain a motion. I will entertain a motion.
Madam Mayor, I move that we approve Resolution 1741, amending the call to public procedures to reduce the required individual speaker time limit from 5 minutes to 3 minutes each unless a different amount of time is listed on the agenda or is determined by the presiding officer or by a majority vote of the council, and authorize the mayor and town clerk to execute all documents.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved by Vice Mayor Hunstetter and seconded by Councilmember O'Neill to amend, to act upon Resolution 1741 to amend the call to the public to reduce the required individual speaking time limit from 5 minutes to 3 minutes, unless a different amount of time is listed on the agenda or determined by the presiding officer or by a majority vote of the council. Is that the intent of your motion? Okay, I just want to make sure of that. Okay, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carry, vote is 4-1. Let's move on to new business. 7A, application to the Rural and Tribal Assistance Pilot Program for design of the Lower Centerville Connector Project. This is to discuss, consider, and act upon a request by staff to approve the submission of a revised grant application to the Rural and Tribal Assistance RTA pilot program for design of the Lower Centerville Connector Project in the updated amount of $364,000 and accept the grant funding if awarded. And we have Assistant to the Town Manager, DK Green, to speak on this topic. Welcome, DK.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Council. I'm not going to repeat everything you just said for the sake of time, but as a recap, the RTA pilot program was created under the Build America Bureau to advance the transportation infrastructure projects in rural and tribal communities by supporting planning and development phase activities for projects reasonably expected to be eligible for certain U.S. Department of Transportation grant programs. If the town is awarded this grant for design, we will pursue additional funding to complete construction of the project at a future date. And if you all recall, about 6 months or so ago, about 5 or 6 months ago, we had applied to this project for the amount of $350,000. And the project was put on hold actually at the federal level. The Build America Bureau canceled or temporarily paused the program. The application window has been reopened. It is now for September 8th, in just a couple of weeks at 11 a.m. And with the pause in the program and having to reapply, some of the questions have changed slightly. The application has changed slightly, but it's very similar to what it was. I have the application completed and ready to go. But because of the delay, and now that if we are awarded the grant funding for design, the anticipated design will now take place in 2026. And after consulting with our town engineer, there will be about a 4% increase in price. Therefore, the original application from $350,000 would now be $364,000.
Gotcha.
Move to my next notes. There is no local match required. Wanted to make sure I reiterate that. Our goal areas as far as our strategic plan, goal area 1 to enhance the quality of life for residents, businesses, and visitors to Clarkdale, and goal area 4, planning for maintenance and growth of quality infrastructure that is sustainable and resilient. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions, but we do recommend that council approve the submission of the Rural and Tribal Assistance Grant for design of the Lower Centerville Connector Project, accept the grant funding if awarded, and authorize the town manager to sign all required documents related to this grant.
Yes, Marnie.
Thank you. So was I correct in my understanding of reading this that it's first come, first serve? So as long as our application is complete, we're getting funded?
Not exactly. It's first come. I wish it were that easy. I wish it were that easy. No, and if I wrote it that way, I apologize for the confusion. It's first come, first serve to all eligible applicants that meet all of the criteria and that the selecting committee feel it's a project worthy of funding. However, in fact, there was a webinar today to basically rediscuss the program, something similar to what I said in 6 months ago. The application window is open for 30 days. It closes October 8th. But as they reiterate, they being the Build America Bureau, get your application in early because the applicants fill up very quickly. And though we did have our application in very early last time, the program was paused. So, but I will say I have my alarm clock set already. At 11 a.m. our time on September 8th, I will have that application resubmitted. So.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Lord?
I guess I just want to say once again, every time we read one of the grants that is submitted is kudos to you and the staff, because the work and the details that go into this, it's incredible. I mean, it is monumentous, and it is, so kudos to at least even just getting the application complete.
Thank you.
Much less submitted. And that in itself is a feat.
Yeah, well, no, it's nice with this one because most of the work was already done. I didn't have to redo it.
I did that.
Tweak it a little bit,
But still.
Oh, I appreciate that. And as I've said, and will continue to say, our team is great. The people that that help support what I do to get these applications completed, all of the work behind the scenes. As I've said, I stand up here, I present it to you all, and I take the majority of the credit, but I do some of the work. Our team is amazing. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments for DK? And just to echo what Councilmember Jones said, is that when I was able to speak at the Center for Future of Arizona, when I got to the slide with the grants, that's when we got the applause, because it is impressive. It's impressive that we've got a system, we've got team members who are working faithfully on these grants, because we know that's how we get our big projects done. And so again, being on top of this and listening very carefully to what happened and being ready to push that button on September 8th to submit this is absolutely perfect. This is a nice little section of a road that needs to get done.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And to echo your sentiments, it was great to be a part of that meeting and to hear the audible gasp in the room for a lot of the communities in the area or in the entire state when they found out what Clarkdale was doing. That was a great experience to be a part of.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions for DK? Hearing or seeing none, I'll take a motion.
Without further delay, I move that we approve the submission of a revised grant application to the Rural and Tribal Assistant RTA pilot program for the design of the Lower Centerville Connector project in the updated amount of $364,000, and accept the grant funding if awarded, and authorize the town manager to execute all documents related to this grant.
I will second.
Okay, it's been moved by Vice Mayor Hunsetter and second by Councilmember Babbitt Pierce to approve the submission of a revised grant application to the Rural and Tribal Assistance RTA pilot program as presented. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Hearing none, motion carried. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
DK.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move on to item 7C, which is the Town of Clarkdale Water Campus. Discuss, consider, and act upon accepting the donation of approximately 1.36 acres from Selna Mangini Investments located on Old Jerome Highway and abutting to the existing water campus on State Route 89A. And we have Public Works Director Lou Anderson to speak on this topic. Welcome, Lou.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Lou Anderson, Public Works Director. As you know, we've been in design of the water campus up off 89A in Old Jerome. While doing the design of that, we discovered that we needed a little more property. The aerial power lines were close to the above ground tank. So fortunately, we have a great partner next door to us, and we were able to work with Selna Mangini, Ruth and I, and the town manager to acquire the needed 1.36 acres, and they are actually donating it to the town. So with that, I just, if council had any questions or anything, I'm here to answer them, and I could read the recommendation. Pretty straightforward.
Pretty straightforward. Marnie.
I just want to thank Ray Selna and Mike Mangini for being such great partners to the town. They certainly didn't have to make this donation. I appreciate that they worked with us and that they are willing to give us this land. They have done so many things to support us, and we're really lucky to have them. And thank you to your team for making it happen.
Any other comments for Lou or questions? Yeah, I too want to echo that. I'm very grateful to Ray Selna and Mike Mangini for working with us on this, because this is an important part of the building our water campus and our redundancy and sustainability of our water system. So I very much appreciate that. And to all of you for doing the heavy lifting to get this done. So if there's no other questions, I'll take a motion.
Madam Mayor, I move that the council accept the donation of approximately 1.36 acres from Selma Mangini Investments located on Old Jerome Highway and abutting the existing water campus on State Route 89A.
There's a second.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember Jones and second by Councilmember O'Neill to accept the donation of approximately 1.36 acres from Selma Mangini Investments located on Old Jerome Highway and abutting the existing water campus on State Route 89A. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Hearing none, motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move on to item 8, which is future agenda items. I think Charity has put at our place beginning of the items for our next meeting on September 9th. Is there any other items we wish to bring up for discussion that are not on the agenda? Hearing none, seeing none, I will then take a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
It's been moved by Councilmember Babbitt Pearson, second by Vice Mayor Hunsetter to adjourn the meeting at 4:26 PM. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Hearing none, motion carried. Thank you all for a very good meeting.